Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast. I'm Stephanie Ricca with CoStar News, as always, here with STR's Isaac Collazo and CoStar's Jan Freitag. Hi, guys.
Hello, Steph.
Good morning.
Oh, that sounded peppy. I love it. So we crossed the equinox earlier this week. Is that what we do to an equinox? We cross it, we pass it. I don't
think it
know.
Cross the equator. We're not.
We passed an equator. All I know is that summer here in the Northern Hemisphere is over and everything that went with it is over. Isaac will unpack continuing performance, dare I say, declines. But I want to point out a couple interesting headlines that we've covered since last we spoke. So, of course, San Francisco, guys, is back in the news. Earlier this month, we learned of the pending purchase of the Hilton SF Union Square and the Park 55. You know, those two hotels that famously went into foreclosure back in 2023. So there's a deal pending on those from two New York-based companies.
Everybody's been waiting for.
Yes. That is the transaction heard around the world once it happens.
Exactly. Once it happens, we're still
Once
waiting.
it happens. Not yet. I think later this week we will know more. But also San Francisco, you know, it's seeing an increase in group and business travel. The City Planning Commission approved a new hotel downtown, about 200 rooms. Doesn't have a brand associated with it yet, but that's one that had been previously put on hold in 2019. So San Francisco.
Would have been interesting if you indeed had the wherewithal to break ground in 19 and open today. You would look like the smartest woman or man in the room. But now, you know, it's going to be another 4 years or so.
I thought San Francisco was never coming back. Never, ever, ever coming back. Never. It was always going to be in the doldrums. Never. Yet it is year to date. I just looked at it. RevPAR is up 8.9%.
Thank you very much.
It's the highest of the top 25 markets year to date, August year to date.
Oh, see, if only they had broken ground in 2019. So elsewhere in California, LA, we've learned this week is going to spend nearly $3 billion to modernize and expand the convention center downtown ahead of 2028 Olympics. You know, LA is kind of, I don't want to say frantically coming up, but hey, it's almost 2026, 2 years away. There's a lot to be done. They're going to be holding, I think they said like judo and taekwondo in the convention center. I don't know. I think downtowns had some good new hotel development, right? You know, that Moxie and AC right across the street from the convention center. Yeah. And then, of course, you both know there's rumors of another new Nashville hotel, part of the reno of Bridgestone Arena. What's happening here?
So it's super interesting. I heard the guy from the Preds give a very, very brief presentation. But if you know downtown Nashville, the arena is, and this is his quote, he was like, well, it's basically built like a bunker. So there are no windows anywhere. And so what they're going to do is they basically blow the sides out, you know, make it more sort of connected to Fifth and Broad, put a rooftop on top of it, and then somehow, somewhere, add a hotel. So super fascinating.
It's that one corner they're going to add it to right there. I can't think of the street, but it's on Broadway, what I saw. But I think the idea is great because they're trying to make Bridgestone Arena part of Broadway. It's on Broadway, but it kind of, like what you described, Jan, it's like a bunker, and it doesn't feel a part of Broadway. And they really want to make it part of Broadway, which makes perfect sense to me because it is right there.
And that's owned by the Preds owner? No?
It's owned by the city with a long-term lease, but with a long-term lease to the Preds, but the Preds have to do all the renos and all the improvements, basically.
And Section
they want to spend, I say like $750 or $800 million. Like it's real money.
And it's going to be ongoing because it'll be completely open. But I was going to say, Steph, if you're ever going to come see a show, Section 115, 116, double letters, best place to see a show at. Just that's my spot. You can see me there.
You know, you all listeners, you think you come to this podcast for data. useful data comes in many forms. I love it. So before we move on to highlights, and we're still in the headlines section, speaking of new hotels, Jan, I think you visited a very special reopening of a
Did you go in
legendary
your
hotel.
private jet? That's what I
Tell
want to know.
us. Tell us
Well,
more.
no, I fly Southwest. I'm not Isaac.
But you were the only one on the flight because it was private for you, right?
Every class is first class on Southwest. I went to the greatest of them all. The Waldorf Astoria has opened partially, and they're open, I think, next month for real. It used to be 1,300 rooms. It is now 300 and something, 20 rooms or something like that, plus 300 and I think 20 condos. The Waldorf Astoria today, Craig Carman had a lovely deep dive story, and he put a price tag on it, which I thought was interesting. So supposedly, it cost $6 billion.
Whoa.
So they spent $1.9 billion on the city block, plus $2 billion in renovations. And then he added, I don't know if you want to do this, but the revenue lost from being closed for 7 years. Oh. So they said, hey, it's all in $6 billion. And it is. So it was built in 1931, and people used to smoke everywhere all the time. And if you remember, it used to be kind of dark. And man, I gotta tell you, they cleaned this up. Dear listeners, dear Steph, dear Isaac, if you have a chance, go through the lobby, just take it in. It is spectacular. It's shiny, it's new, it's all silver, it's sort of Art Deco, Art Nouveau, 1920s. Like they're really leaning into that, and it is very, very pretty. So it's really nice to see what $6 billion can build.
So, he showed me pictures, and I tried. I was going to be his Sherpa. He wouldn't let me go, Steph. I was going, I'll go, please. I'll carry your bags, Mr. Freitag.
Isaac will go and arrange the flowers in the giant urn on the front table there.
And Mr. Freitag only likes this kind of water. He only likes this kind of, cheese. He's very picky, very picky.
They used to have this line, meet me at the clock, and the clock is back, at Peacock Alley. So it was just really nice. So it's now going to be fully open. The condos haven't sold as briskly, I think, as they wanted to, but now that the hotel is open, they expect a lot more of the condo sales to happen. So, and the condos are not part of the rental pool, and you're not, I guess you're allowed to rent them out, but the lease has to be at least a year, and somebody at the Waldorf has to approve your renters. So I don't think it's going to be the primary residence for a lot of people. I think this is for the people who can afford it. This is going to be their second or third or so unit. But yeah, if you have a chance to see it, it is really quite stunning.
Isaac is pointing at Jan, suggesting that Jan should take a second residence in the city that we could perhaps all visit. But Isaac, I don't know if you and I would be cleared by the board.
His security team wouldn't let us in, Steph.
Well, that hotel legendarily banned Paris and Nikki Hilton when they grew up there as teenagers. So there's precedent. Well, it's good to lead with some good news because we are about to turn it over to Isaac for August data highlights. And not that I'm telling you anything you don't know, but this summer has been a little bit less than the best summer we've ever had. Isaac, give us the details on how we ended August.
Yeah, we ended August on a low light, right? So August RevPAR was down 1%. It's the third month where RevPAR's fallen by 1% or more. So basically, summer was down about 1 point something total. ADR was up, but that's nothing to write home about because it was only up 0.3% in a month. And I think more importantly, ADR has been below the rate of inflation in 23 of the past 36 months. And I think that's the real story there, that we're really seeing some real pushback in terms of rate growth. And then, of course, that's impacting margins. It is the longest streak that ADR has been below the rate of inflation. It's from March 2020 to June 2022. That's since the Great Recession. So, that's a long time. I'm sorry, I didn't read my own notes. Every once in a while I need to read my own notes, excluding the months from March 2020 to June 2022. What's really interesting to me, and we've been talking about this a lot in the weekly stuff, is the top 25 markets are driving the industry's RevPAR retreat. And if you look at the top 25 in August versus everything else, top 25 RevPAR was down 3% versus plus 0.4% for everyone else. Houston, which was down 29% in August, accounted for 100 basis points of the top 25 decrease and 40 basis points of the national change. And you go, why Houston? Just a reminder, last year, Houston saw very strong growth because of the spring storms in Texas, a lot of displacement business. The drag on top 25 and the U.S. number will continue through the end of the year. So it won't be as much as what we saw in August or even July, but again, it's still going to be a drag. Other contributors to the top 25's decline were New Orleans, which was down 15%, Denver, which was down 12%, and Las Vegas, which was down 9%. In total, we saw 86 markets, which is about 50% of all markets, saw RevPAR decline. That was slightly more than in July, but less than in June. In June, we had 98 markets that were declining in RevPAR. And here's some good news. For the fifth consecutive month, New York had the nation's highest occupancy at 86%. So Jan, when you were there, you're contributing to that occupancy increase. In terms of the chain scales, luxury was the only chain scale that saw positive RevPAR change in August, up 3.5%. Economy, again, saw the largest decrease at minus 4.6%. And then upper upscale saw the least decline at minus 1.4%. Independents were flat. For the year, RevPAR is at 0.2%. So it's the lowest year-to-date RevPAR ever, excluding, I can't say that word today, recessionary periods and 2020. And I don't consider 2020 a recessionary period because it was such a, obviously a medical condition or environment thing. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that. We've never seen that. Year-to-date RevPAR is 1%. Again, that's extremely low. And then we also saw room demand on a year-to-date basis go negative for the first time since the pandemic. So good news, though, year-to-date demand still is the fourth highest ever recorded. Last year was the third, so this year's the fourth. And this year's room demand is still higher than what it was in August year-to-date of 2022. So even though we're seeing all this downward pressure and we think it's really, really bad, again, just keep in mind, we're still selling rooms. It's not like it's completely dried up. So it's still the fourth highest. In terms of the top 25, year-to-date RevPAR is at minus 0.1%. Outside the top 25, it was up 0.5%. For the year-to-date number, Las Vegas is the biggest detractor, if you want to use that word. It was down minus 11%. If you exclude Las Vegas, top 25 was up 1.3% year-to-date. And it would move the U.S. to 0.5%. Again, 0.5% versus 0.2 is still not great. So at least it'd move it better, but it's not great. And then we did still see bifurcations very evident in the chain scales. Luxury is up 5.3%, and then it steps all the way down to minus 1.8% in economy. So you can almost see it's almost a perfect staircase in terms of that bifurcation story that we've been talking about. And then outside of the U.S., global RevPAR for August was up 2.1%, all on ADR. China, France, Germany, Mexico, and the U.S. were all the ones that saw RevPAR fall in the month. And then in terms of positive, we had Middle East and Africa, Australia, Japan, and Latin America all saw greater than 9% RevPAR growth in the month, all on ADR. And then for the year-to-date, global RevPAR is up 2.8% on ADR, which is up 3.1%.
Real quick, one quick correction. He just spoke so fast. So the RevPAR year-to-date percent change is 0.2. The ADR percent change is 1%. Right. You had said RevPAR, but just to be clear. I did. So ADR.
God, I 1%. Can't say exclude, and I don't even know ADR and RevPAR now.
No, it's okay. You have a lot going on there. But point is, RevPAR is 0.2%, lowest ever outside of recessionary periods. ADR up 1%, also lowest, right, outside of recessionary periods. So
I don't know. I didn't check that one, actually. I'll have to look at that. But it has to be among the lowest. Yes, it'd have to be among the lowest for a non-recessionary period. I'd agree with that.
And I think that's the story. Like I don't have anything else to add other than to say, wow,
There's not a lot of adding. There's a lot of subtracting.
Yeah, fair enough. I think last time we used the word stuttering, and I think I still come back to that.
I don't even know if it's stuttering anymore. Someone asked if we're in a recession, industry recession, and when we would get out of it. Oh, no, actually, it was on LinkedIn. He's pointing to himself, dear listeners. But no, someone actually put that. Maybe it was you on my LinkedIn. Maybe that was you.
It was.
And then someone asked yesterday, when are we getting out of this? What's the horizon? I said, what's difficult because in past downturns, it really was linked to an economic recession. So once the recession ended, you can see the path back up. We're not in a recession. I looked at GDP. Year to date, it's up 1.7%. It's not great, but it's also not recessionary. Yeah. I am having a lot of trouble speaking today. That's what happens.
Need some coffee.
I woke up, like I told you, I woke up very early this morning and I just can't get my mouth in gear today. So
we use Oxford Economics, Tourism Economics as our macroeconomic forecasters, and they're absolutely saying GDP growth 2025 forecast is 1.9%. So there's not a recession in sight. Right. Yes, it's bumpy up and down the food chain, and you have the tariff impact and the tax cut impact, and immigration and all those conversations. But they're like, look, bottom line is continued growth of the American economy, right. And then we are sitting here looking at our data and saying, growth? What growth? So it's so interesting how we are somewhat, I don't want to say disconnected. I don't want to call it into existence, but it seems like we're a little bit disconnected from what the macro environment is if we look at our little microcosm of hotels.
But it is, right? Because when I look at per capita, the number of rooms sold per employed capita, I don't know if I said that correctly, but the number of people employed, and it is going down when it used to go up. As more people are employed, demand was, you'd see that increase also in demand, and we're just not seeing it. And so again, I caution because again, demand is still the fourth highest, right? So we're not like in completely out of the game. It's just a very soft game at this point. It's just we're stuttering. Okay, we'll go with that.
And it's interesting, too, from an operating perspective, what we've heard a lot, what our hotels reporting team hears a lot at events and in talking with, whether it's operators, general managers, asset managers, revenue managers, saying that crutch of uncertainty, that does not fly anymore, right? Especially now in budget season for 26. Yes, it might be uncertain, but you still got to get there. You still have to do your job. You have to find your way around what the numbers are or aren't telling you. So that Band-Aid has been ripped off. Hotel operators and people on that side of the operating business can no longer use that really as a, who knows what'll happen. Isaac, we're going to start with you for topic of the month this episode because I believe that you are going to cue us up for a conversation, a deep dive into ADR. Take it away.
Yeah, one of the questions we've had is, have we seen this before? And especially on the ADR side, right? We just talked about it in the review that, ADR is only at 1%. It's been very just bumpy and it's not growing at the rate of inflation. And the answer is yes, we actually have seen this kind of before, kind of. In 2019, we were seeing an increase in the number of submarkets that were losing ADR. And if you look back and go in history and look at by month, you can actually see it rising. But then, of course, we had the pandemic, and then so we don't know where it would have ended, was going to turn around, but then the pandemic came, and again, the world shut down. Right now in August, we have 48% of submarkets who have lost ADR. Since 1989, and out of the 406 months that I reviewed, this ranks as the 37th highest. You don't want to be on that number. You don't want to get high, right? So this is the 37th highest number of submarkets.
All right, my brain can't handle that. Break that down another way for me, please.
We are seeing an increase that we've not seen before, essentially, in the number of submarkets. That's the net. You don't want, if you were in the lower end, if you were 406 out of 406, great. That means very few submarkets are losing ADR. We're 37th out of 406.
No.
Yeah, that's not good. And then for this review, I did exclude again the months from March 2020 to December 2022 because they were just screwing up the analysis because we're doing by month. So just assume, I was trying to see, okay, how bad is this? And basically, that's the question I was asking myself: is this bad? Maybe not how bad is it. I was asking, is this really bad? And it's really interesting, right? It just again, because you don't want to be ranked high in this case. A high ranking here is bad because these are markets losing ADR. But there is good news, is in that there were less submarkets losing ADR in August than in July, when 50% of submarkets lost ADR. That went negative, and in June, when 49%. And I also thought one of the things that Jan and I were talking is, okay, that's the loss. What about those in the higher that are actually gaining ADR? How many of them are gaining ADR at or above the inflation rate, right? Think about the inflation rate, about 2.5 to 2.7, depends on the month. In August, so it was interesting, but again, it's a wah-wah. In August, just 22% of submarkets saw ADR grow at or above the rate of inflation.
Just 22%. So that's 1 in 5 submarkets is growing ADR above the level of inflation, which means there's huge pressure on margins.
Right. And that is among the lowest of the 406 months that I reviewed. Right.
August.
And the only time we've seen such a low percentage has been in recessionary periods. Right. So normally as you're getting into recessionary periods, so when I looked at it was 2009, 2001. So yeah, it's very different. So then I thought, okay, let me look at it a different way. Let me look at the past 4 months. Over the past 4 months, 46% of submarkets have seen ADR go backwards. And now we're looking at years. We're going back to 1989 on a 4-month basis. This is the 4th highest percentage in history and the most since 2010. Excluding 2020 and 2021. So again,
of total submarkets that lost
losing,
RevPAR,
right.
Not
ADR. We're talking ADR.
Right. Okay.
And so
not below rate of inflation or any other sort of benchmark in there, just lost.
They've lost. So again, it is. We had seen something like this in 2019, but not then again. It didn't in the 4-month period, 2019, it didn't happen, but we were starting to see it go up. But now we are in a kind of difference. That's why I said it's kind of, we've seen it, but maybe not. We've not. This is a little different. And again, trying to understand why is the harder piece. What is it? Is it the uncertainty? What is driving this? And then so I did a little bit more analysis. I said, okay, let's go to a hotel level basis. We got the submarket basis. How many hotels, and here we had to use comparable units, right? Because I wanted to make certain there was no ramp up issues and things. 43% of comparable hotels reported an ADR decrease in the past 4 months. And here, in this case, these are hotels that were losing ADR of 2% or more. Because I assume that plus or minus 2 is flat. Just say, hey, just leave it alone. That's flat because people, you can have group business, you have events, you have things. So I'm going, let's look at those that are just 2% or more in terms of loss in ADR. 43% of all hotels, comparable units, lost 2% or more in ADR in the last 4 months. A quarter, 25% of all hotels I looked at saw a decrease of more than 5% year over year. So now we're starting to say, hey, that's impactful now. You're seeing a pretty big change in terms of their ADR picture.
And those are all year over year loss,
all
right?
Year over
Not
year.
just month over. Okay.
And then I looked at, like I said, I assumed that -2 to +2 is flat. 26% of all hotels that I looked at, comparable hotels, were flat. And I was looking at about 33,000 hotels, just FYI. And so just give you an idea of how many hotels. It's a lot of hotels that we're looking at. Of the hotels that were losing 5% or more, slightly more of them were in the top 25 than outside the top 25. And they tended to be in the Western US and Southern US. So again, some of that could be Houston, Southern could be Houston, Western could be a little bit of Las Vegas, right? So you have, I mean, there's some reasons for that, I think. Um, and I think that's really it. That's the story. It is interesting. I looked at, okay, these hotels losing ADR. Maybe they had such a high ADR and they were above 2019 on a real inflation adjusted basis. No, that didn't pan out either. It didn't matter if you were above 2019 or below 2019 on an inflation adjusted basis, you still had a probability of losing ADR on a hotel basis.
Man, for someone who says you woke up too early and didn't have your wits about you with coffee, that was a lot of numbers.
It's an interesting piece of analysis that I want to continue working through because I think there's more there. The harder part is like, okay, and that's what Jan and I were debating this morning when I came in, is like, why, right? Because I can tell you the numbers, I can tell you the facts, but trying to unpack that and like, why is this happening? And why is it so different? You know, again, somewhat like we started seeing in 2019, but 2019 never ended per se because we had the pandemic that kind of ended it. So if we would have had 2019, we might have been able to map it out, right?
Jan, I have a feeling you might have a few thoughts on this topic.
So zooming way back out, to 30,000 foot, you could argue, hey, room demand growth is bumping, stuttery, not great. So then therefore, that doesn't give hoteliers the sense of pricing power. And so we're seeing on probably the lower end out west that some hoteliers are saying, look, buy two, get one free, or hey, let me open up the cheaper channels, right? That this is not necessarily a discounting story, but it could be a story about just having access to customers who don't want to pay as much, right? We have the K-shaped economy is on a lot of economists' minds right now. That the middle America and people who don't have a whole lot of income for their household, that they're really thinking about how they spend their discretionary dollars, and in order to attract them, you have to provide a lot of value. And that could mean, that you're opening up channels that you said, a year ago, 2 years ago, nah, that's fine. We're just all trying to get us direct. And now we're using a little bit more of the OTAs or the other discounted channels. So I think what you're seeing, what Isaac's describing is the beginning, or we're right in the middle of it. I don't think this is going to change dramatically if we don't have an uptick in room demand for a lot of those properties. That gives hoteliers a sense of like, oh, okay, I have the occupancy. Oh, okay, that gives me some pricing power. So I appreciate the deep dive. I appreciate the sentiment. And I don't know that this is going to change very much.
All right, Jan, what are you going to enlighten us on this month? Maybe it's a little more optimistic and happy and positive? Just saying. Just suggesting.
If you want more optimism, I don't know, this might not be the podcast.
This may not be the podcast for you. At least we bring some laughs. Tell us what you got.
Okay, this is not funny either. So I am taking Isaac's conversation about the deep dive. He started at, the property level, then went to the submarket level. I put on LinkedIn a chart around the topic of, hey, what is a hotel recession? There's no official definition, of course, but if we think about 2 consecutive quarters of RevPAR deceleration, wow, we're getting mighty close. Q2 was down, July, August were down, September we only have 2 clean weeks, that's because we have holidays. So what does that mean for September? And then we already know that Q4 for the nation is likely going to be down because we had the hurricane impacts that made for Q4 very, very tough comp. So I said, hey, where are we compared to other recessionary periods? And I used basically the same frame of reference that Isaac just laid out. I looked at all 691 submarkets, and I said, each month, did you grow RevPAR? Yes or no? That's it. And so if you look in January of 2001, 80% of submarkets grew RevPAR. And then that number went all the way down, including a sound effect. In September, it was 7%. And then in December, call that 30% or so. So it went from 70 down to 30 in 2001. In 2008, it went from 70 down to 16. So this is the percent of submarkets that grew RevPAR. In 2008, went from 70 down to 16 in December. And now, in 2025, we start out at 60% in January, and now we're at 48% in July. And so I charted that, and that chart, those three lines, they look like they overlap. They overlap. And so my question to the audience on LinkedIn was, hey, does history repeat itself? Well, the chart says history repeats itself. I'm being very firm about that statement, but I'm less firm in my commentary. I'm wondering, are we sliding into a recessionary environment in the lodging industry? Nothing that Isaac just said in his data deep dive makes me think, oh, no. That's just silly, Jan. Everything he's saying is like, wow, there's just a lot of bumpiness or stutteriness or a lot of things that are falling off the wagon here, and the industry is really not on great solid footings. We're losing ADR in a lot of markets, in a lot of submarkets, a lot of hotels. He just mentioned even luxury hotels are seeing ADR deceleration. So I'm not saying, I'm just wondering, where are we going through the remainder of this year? Of course, as I said, the fourth quarter is going to be super hard to parse because the national data is going to be much worse than I think a lot of submarket data, because obviously that the impact on the East Coast and the Carolinas will skew the national data from last year. But I think this is the environment that we are working in. And when we talk to operators on the ground, I think they're collectively telling us the same thing, right? It's very, very hard to plan. It's very, very hard. Booking windows are short. Leisure customers are looking for a lot of value. They're booking not 6 weeks out, not 8 weeks out. They're looking for next weekend and what's going on. The unemployment rate is steady so far, but people aren't super comfortable, with the macroeconomic picture. And so that probably makes them say, let me just save a little bit and not splurge as much. And clearly on the hospitality side, this is discretionary spending, and that's the first thing to go. So very interesting to continue to follow that. Deloitte, quick shout out to Megan Rausch from Deloitte, put out their summer business travel survey out, and it shows that a lot more corporate transient travelers on the Fortune 1000 list are cutting down their travel spend and the amount of nights that they're traveling. I think none of this makes us feel good about Q4. The only silver lining here is that the GDP forecast that Oxford Economics puts out for 2026 is stronger than for 2025, because by then the tariffs will be absorbed and the tax cuts will hit, and hopefully that gives us more disposable incomes from the corporate side and from the leisure side to drive more demand and then hopefully more ADR. That's a little bit of wishful thinking today, but my point here is to say, wow, does history repeat itself? Are we looking like 2001, 2008? Question mark. Let's see, when we get together in December, how that data has developed.
It's just everything I thought I knew, I don't know anymore, right? That's what I keep thinking about. Well, here's the thing. You just said something that sparked, and I've been writing about, hey, we have 2 clean weeks in September, right? It was the week ending the 13th, the week ending the 20th. The week of the 13th was worse than the week of Labor Day. It should have been better, right? Because it was only the 2 clean weeks where there were no impacts from holidays or anything, and yet it was actually down. I don't know what to expect when we report the week of the 20th, because we haven't gotten the data yet. But it's everything we thought we knew that you could forecast and think through is like, it's not happening. And again, a lot of it's coming from the top 25, as I reported. And again, some of it's Houston, which is interesting. I mean, that's you can take that out, but even when you take some of that out, it's not like it's stellar and it's great and things are, booming everywhere else. They're really very soft, and I think that's the hard part. So if history repeats itself, heck if we know, because every time we think we know, it doesn't happen. So at least that's my point of view. Jan, much smarter than me, so he probably knows more than I do on this.
But it sounds like, we're about to achieve that 2 consecutive quarters of RevPAR decline, indicating a clinical or technical lodging industry recession, hotel industry.
Well,
recession.
just to be clear, nobody has ever defined it. We can define it right now on this podcast and say,
we
look,
can do
2
that.
consecutive quarters of RevPAR decline is a lodging recession. Thank you very much. Stephanie said it first, and you will forever go forth as the coiner of that phrase. But it's not we are the only ones who can make that definition.
Exactly. This has been a heavy episode, guys. A lot of data to unpack, a lot of less than optimistic news. But, I can always count on you to leave our recordings, leave our episodes on a fun and interesting note. When you give me your famous metaphor every episode, you give me something that you're comparing the health, the state of the hotel industry with at this given moment. So don't disappoint me. Jan, what do you got?
All right. I have a topic that I know nothing about. So I'm, as you know, from Germany, and my youngest is 7. And so we thought, he's an American. He's got to start playing baseball. So we put him in a uniform and he started to play baseball. And he had his first games. And at the second game or so, he was at bat twice and he hit the ball twice, which I think technically means he bat 1,000. So
Sounds good.
He should retire. But so that made me wonder, like people were sort of joking about that. And so I looked up, what's a Hall of Famer batting average? And as most Americans probably know, it's like a 300, right? So you strike out more than you hit. And so I think where we are in this environment, for the listeners out there, this is the time to try things, understanding that that some of them won't hit, right? But this is the interesting time to say, okay, how do I track new target markets? What's going on with my pricing? Which channels do I open up? This is the time to just try new things, but understanding, you'll some of the things won't hit. But I just thought it was interesting to say, you can do really well in baseball and not hit the ball at all. And that makes you a Hall of Famer. So I think for the revenue managers out there, this is the time to try things.
I think that's really fun, but I'll tell you who's going to hit. It's going to be the Cleveland Guardians, #1 in the ALC. Isaac?
I have no idea what you just said, but yay, I guess.
You can see the stadium from Steph's window. So,
I'll take any positive metaphor. Isaac, what do you have for us?
Well, 2 things. I had one. I was at Shaky Knees and this weekend in Atlanta, which was sold out. And yes, I have shaky knees about the industry. So very shaky on this one. So it actually works, even though it was a great time. The other one, tonight I'm going to see Toad DeWitt's Sprocket at the Ryman. And they have a song that's All I Want, which is their big hit, right? And so all I want is RevPAR to come back. So I'm going to go with that one.
Not to be this close every day?
Every day. To be this close. So you got the words. So it'll be a fun time tonight at the Ryman, and hopefully we'll see the return of RevPAR for the industry as well.
Hey,
and again, it ties into you, Jan, is that every rev manager, GM, all they want is RevPAR. So you have to try different things. I 100% agree.
Not to feel this way. Oh, I'll stop. That does it for this episode. Thank you for hanging in with us. Isaac and I will be at the Lodging Conference in early October, so please do find us and say hello. Thank you for supporting the show by listening. Remember to tell your boss, tell your friends, Tell your colleagues and spread the word. As usual, find all the news you need to succeed in the hotel industry at costar.com/hotel news. And find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you like to listen. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thank
See
you,
you, Steph.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast, was recorded on September 24, 2025 by me, Stephanie Ricca. The episode was edited by Rachel Daub. Find all hotel industry news at costar.com/hotel news. Thanks for listening.